Chicago, 2011. A cop is murdered. Police and prosecutors swear they have the trigger man. He swears he didn't do it. How far will each side go to prove they're right?
Like it's just one bombshell after another, where you're like, what?
The story of a PlayStation, a brain-eating amoeba, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Off Duty, out now. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
This message comes from Jackson. Taxes aren't something you can only think about once a year. With investments, planning for tax day is year-round. Fortunately, Jackson offers tax-efficient products. Visit jackson.com for more information on how our products can make your tax bill a little bit less painful. Jackson is short for Jackson Financial Incorporated, Jackson National Life Insurance Company, Lansing, Michigan, and Jackson National Life Insurance Company of New York, Purchase, New York.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, and welcome to the Psych Legal Pop Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about popular culture through the lens of an attorney and a therapist. I'm Brooke Brigham, I'm the attorney.
And I'm Tess Brigham, I'm the therapist.
And we are excited today to be talking about a new movie documentary called Brats.
Yay! It's about the 80s.
It's about the 80s. And it was made by Andrew McCarthy, who is a member of what came to be known as the Brat Pack.
Mm-hmm.
And if you did not come of age in the 1980s, I don't think you're going to find this interesting at all. Maybe. I don't. But this is a very specific documentary to a specific group of people. And that's people who were like in junior high and high school in the 1980s.
It's a Gen X movie.
Yes, the Gen X movie. And this was a time when movie studios began to make tons of movies about young people, which apparently was not a thing before. And so there were all these young actors who were getting these roles, and very good actors and actors who have endured over time and got their start in these genre of movies. And the reason for the name Brats and Brat Pack is based upon an article that was written by David Blum, who now is one of my least favorite people. He was a writer. At the time, he was only 29.
Yes.
But he was so, he really looked down on these actors. And anyway, he was working for the New York Magazine. And I think he said it was his idea. He had this idea. It started out as a profile of Emilio Estevez, who was one of the best known of this group of people because his father is Martin Sheen, and he came from, a show business family and background, had a lot of connections. And so I guess Emilio agreed to talk to him. And he even took him out on the town with him and Rob Lowe and Judd Nelson, kind of hung out with these guys for a few nights. And then his article was very mean and demeaning. And basically, he came up with that name, Brat Pack, which is the take on the Rat Pack. Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., that group of people. And he shredded them and basically said that, they were just kind of these young, entitled kids. He called them, in the article, he called them boys and girls or brats. He rarely named them by name, although he did go through who each of them was. But he was demeaning, he was critical of them and their acting, and it was just, and it turned out to be a very defining moment in all of they were hurt by it.
Yes.
These actors.
Well, and I think that this documentary is very much about Andrew McCarthy and his relationship with the article, because I think one of the most interesting parts about the documentary is how each person took it, how each, and Demi Moore, who obviously has done a lot of work on herself, you can tell, and we both read her autobiography, Inside Out, which was very good, that really how each of them decided to look at it really did change the trajectory of their lives. And I think Andrew really was the one that was most disturbed, hurt, really took it in a way, and took it personally in a way that I do believe has affected him his entire career. And he talks about that. And so I have this little quick story. So when I was in LA, Hollywood, the second job I had is I worked for a talent manager. Her name's Joni. And I can't remember what was going on. Somehow Joni was a bit of a pack rat. So we were always trying to clean stuff out. Her husband was always like, God, get her to clean some stuff out. So I think we're cleaning things out. I pulled something out that said Andrew McCarthy. And I said, oh, what is this? So did you meet Andrew McCarthy? She's like, oh God, yeah. She's like, I met with him once and it was so bizarre. And I said, well, what happened? And she said, well, it was for representation. So I was having this conversation in 1998. So I think this lunch they had was in, 96, 97. And she said, well, we went to the Chateau Marmont and he was the entire time so she just like kind of smug and, she just didn't feel like she could relate to him at all. And he seemed very image conscious. And as she said, at one point, they're at the Chateau Marmont having lunch, meeting, whatever. And Brad Pitt walks in and he sees Brad Pitt and he just starts to go into this whole thing about how he, wishes he had a career like his, was like projecting all this stuff out to him, just kind of lamenting. Very much. And after you watch the documentary, you're like, oh, I think I understand. I understand the headspace he was in 96, 97, which was that he very much was looking at someone like Brad Pitt, who didn't come up until Thelma and Louise. So he avoided all of the Brat Pack stuff and how his life and his career and how he saw himself, isn't at all what he wants. He wants to be Brad Pitt. And so Joni didn't sign him. I can't remember exactly what happened and how it all turned out, if he said no, she said no, how it all did. But she just said it was she was like, it wasn't good. He was not in a good place. And then I remember in 1999, after she met with Patrick Dempsey, who was also not, was an 80s kid, but not doing much then. I remember her saying, oh my God, you have no idea. He looks so cute. He looks so good. He's in such a good place. His mindset is right. And then sure enough, he got Scream 3 and then he got Grey's Anatomy. So your mindset and all that really does make a difference. It does. But I do remember her being kind of like having this experience with Andrew McCarthy and then this experience with Patrick Dempsey, and she's working with him and signed him and, there you go. And so obviously Andrew, right? Like he says it, he carried that with him for decades upon decades. And
this was kind of like this was his kind of journey.
Yes.
So making this movie, I think it was his way of revisiting and, maybe trying to get over it. And has Andrew McCarthy even worked since the 80s?
Yes, he has. And so this is the other thing that I've noticed about Andrew McCarthy. So I was never a big Andrew McCarthy person, even way back then. Remember, Dad hated him. Anytime he showed up in a movie,
really?
Dad could not stand Andrew McCarthy. So anyway, but in the last, so he's directed a lot. Andrew McCarthy has. He directed a bunch of episodes of Orange is the New Black.
Oh.
And then I've seen him show up in various shows over the years. Like I'll be rewatching some show. He's like on an episode of Monk, or he's, an episode of this or episode of that. But he played this part of this hitman in that show Good Girls, that's on Netflix with Mae Whitham and Retta and Christina Hendricks, the redhead from Mad Men. There's a show called Good Girls, and he plays this hitman, and he's great. And I remember watching him going, oh, he's
a
really
good actor.
Yeah, he's really coming into his own, and he's really funny. He's got a very dry sense of humor. And when he plays these kind of very funny, little smug roles and of authority, he's really good. He's really, really good. So he has been working this whole time. I think he works more behind the camera and does other things. And he wrote a book and obviously he made this documentary. But I think that it sounds like that really affected his acting. And he says that in the documentary of how much it affected how he felt about himself and how he saw himself and how he closed himself off, which is, when you're an actor, you have to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to trust, be vulnerable, open yourself up in ways that people don't necessarily want to. And it sounds to me like he just spent so much time that this really did do his career in.
Yeah. And the problem is, it wasn't just that the article was mean. It was that term Brat Pack then became part of the cultural lexicon. So everyone, they're on Donahue, they're on Good Morning America. Everyone who interviews them refers to them as the Brat Pack or Brat Pack. So this name stuck. It's still to this day.
Yeah.
That's what we call it. And so the first part of the movie, they talk about why people of our generation are so, the affection that we have for these people in these movies is that this is the first time that movies are being made about young people, about our lives, about how we think and feel, and this sense of connection and belonging. It's always these groups of friends, the movies, like St. Elmo's Fire. You got these close-knit groups of friends. There's never any parents in these movies, so there's nothing to bring you down. It's all about, just focusing on the things that young people want to emulate, friendship, community, connection, all that kind of stuff. And every movie kind of had that same theme. And they're very good actors.
Yes.
And I look at them and I'm like, oh my gosh, you were 20. Emilio Estevez was 21 when he did Breakfast Club. These people range from like 21 to maybe 25, very, very young, but yet they're all very talented. Oh, and that was another thing. David Blum was criticizing them that they weren't real actors. None of them had studied acting. And I mean, he's just such a jerk.
And the other thing too, is if you take a step back and look at all these people, when you saw St. Elmo's Fire, you knew who every face in that crowd, except for Demi Moore. Demi Moore was the one that was
new. Yeah.
My God, that voice, when they at her at 22, that
she looked
voice,
so young.
And the voice, that raspy voice, it's almost like it's gone.
What
like now she sounds clear. She sounds quite clear now, but
well, we know this from reading her book, right? Okay. The guy, was it, what's his
Joel Schumacher.
Joel Schumacher.
Who really loved her.
He loved her so much that he said he paid for her to go to rehab before this movie. He wanted her in this movie so badly. And she was talking about this with Andrew.
Yeah.
And she's just like, they could have just went and got another actress.
Yeah.
And she said, no, I don't want to go to rehab. I want to do this movie. And they're like, no, you need to go to rehab. They paid for her to go to rehab, waited for her to get out of rehab, and then got her that sober companion so she could do the film, make sure she finished the film. And I don't know why he did that for her, but I mean, thank God he did.
He saw something.
He saw something in her. And, she's probably the most successful of that entire group.
Yeah.
And went on to be a big movie star, making tens of millions of dollars of film.
She definitely is probably the most famous, like the most elite Hollywood A-list, I think, of anybody. And what's also interesting about this is how Mare Winningham, who was also in St. Elmo's Fire, she never even was adopted into any of that because she was always
made anything else, did she? She never made another movie
with them. 80s? She's made tons of movies. She was working, but she's always working.
Not with them.
Not with them. But she, because I think that she hadn't been in movies with them before. I think it was this combination of the fact that there were all of these configurations of relationships.
Overlapping.
I mean, that was the whole thing. It was like, oh, these three people were in Breakfast Club and then they were in St. Elmo's Fire, and oh, you're enemies in here and now you're lovers and now you're doing this and now you're doing that. I mean, there was all these connections, but Mare Winningham, I think, was always a very serious actress, and she was just in the movie, and then she kind of went back randomly, and was never a part of it. But I didn't realize because we learned this when he meets with Emilio Estevez, I didn't realize that they then started avoiding being in movies together.
Right.
I didn't realize that's what was happening. Because I think when we were there, we were seeing it. We're like, well, then they were in Pretty in Pink. And then this happened and this happened. We're Some Kind of Wonderful. Like, well, then this and then this. And we just kind of assumed in our minds, like, oh, yeah, didn't they all? I mean, Rob Lowe and Demi Moore.
Emilio was. He straight out said, I don't want to. Not that I don't like you. I don't want to be in a movie with you because I want to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to be, and he had already worked on, he had written screenplays.
Yeah.
He directed things. He wanted to be serious. So this was a career move for him.
Yes.
The other people did go on and work. Well, some of them did go on and work together, but then there were different combinations. Then we get new people coming in, like John Cryer and then,
Leah Thompson.
Yeah. And then there's this whole thing about even before The Breakfast Club and those movies, you had all the movies with Tom Cruise, the Outsiders and
Taps and Fast Times at Ridgemont High and
Valley Girl.
Oh, yeah. And that's the other part of it. Like, if you think about David Bloom and his article, the way he made it seem like these guys just woke up that morning, decided to become actors, got into a movie, and now are entitled.
Now they're just broing out.
Yeah. And so, but if you take a step back, right, Rob Lowe and Andrew McCarthy were in Class, like that movie Class together with Jacqueline Bisset, which I didn't realize that Andrew McCarthy had an affair with Jacqueline Bisset. Like on that, like in the movie and in real life.
Oh, in real life.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes.
Can you imagine that movie being made today?
Oh, God, no. So many things wouldn't be
He
done.
accidentally sleeps with his roommate's mom.
So, and he had done, Rob Lowe had been in a bunch of movies. Emilio Estevez had been in Outsiders.
Yes,
I mean, Emilio Estevez is like part of Hollywood royalty.
Yes, The Outsiders. It was like Matt Dillon, Tom Cruise, Ralph Macchio,
Patrick Swayze.
Oh, my God.
And then, what was I going to say? And then Andrew McCarthy had been working before. Ally Sheedy was in that movie with, so disturbing, I think I saw it way too young, Bad Boys with Sean Penn. And yes, she was this girlfriend.
She was the girlfriend?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
So she had been working and doing things. I know I had seen her. I mean, obviously Molly Ringwald had been, working and doing things. So what was so, I think, egregious about it, and why I think they were upset, was it was just like, wait a second, I didn't wake up yesterday. Like, I've been acting, I've been doing things, and okay, but you cannot be angry at someone for being young.
And being successful. These were successful movies. They brought in millions of dollars. It was like this guy, Blum, he was just such a hater.
Yeah.
So jealous. And because he talks about in the article going out, apparently they all hung out at the Hard Rock Cafe on Hollywood Boulevard. That's the only one I know of in LA, which is tourist central. And,
yes. But maybe back then it wasn't.
I don't know why they're hanging out there. But anyway, he went out with them a couple nights to, some of these places. And of course, girls are coming over and wanting their autograph, wanting to talk to them. I think this guy was jealous.
Mm-hmm. No, I think he was. I think he was jealous. In the documentary, we do meet, Andrew McCarthy sits down with him. Yeah. And I feel like Andrew McCarthy was pretty gracious with him because he was really trying to understand, like, what was your motivation? Why do this? What were you thinking? And not once does David Blum ever stop and say to Andrew McCarthy and to everybody else, like, you know what? I'm really sorry. Like, I thought it was just going to be a funny, snarky thing. I thought it would maybe go away. I thought this, I thought that. And I was hurt. I was upset. And I apologize because it wasn't my intention. Because actually, David Blum wrote another article that says, I don't regret doing this.
Yeah.
Like, I wrote the article and I don't regret it. So he's now 60 years old.
Yeah.
He's in his 60s and he has zero regrets.
He said in the interview in the documentary that he did not feel bad about it. He had no regrets about it. He was proud of the name. He came up with that Brat Pack thing. He was proud of it. And McCarthy says something like, he referred to it as a scathing article. And then Blum says, you thought it was scathing?
Mm.
And he's like, Yeah, and it is. I went and read the whole thing. That's terrible.
Yeah.
It's an awful article.
Well, and then I was really surprised to hear that we see him meeting up with Emilio Estevez, that the two of them had not seen each other since the premiere of St. Elmo's Fire.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they have not seen each other.
Yeah.
So that is really surprising, because the way in which, and I remember at the time with newspapers and articles, and there was always, people out and about. I feel like I saw a lot of it. I think it was a lot of Rob Lowe. A lot, like out and about partying, doing things. Same way we see young people today, young performers, Taylor Swift.
Yeah, Taylor Swift, the Hadid sister.
Yeah, like the same thing.
Yeah.
That they're out doing things, they're hanging out. These are the people in their lives. But I had no idea how much all these people scattered from each other. That's not what I remember seeing, but it really was. I mean, it was almost like Emilio was like, goodbye, getting away from all you people.
Well, Emilio, let's start talking about these visits.
Yes.
So Andrew starts, goes out to LA first to, talk to as many of these people as he can. He goes to Emilio's house, and Emilio looked very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't even sit down. I mean,
No.
he's like, you're not going to be here that long. They were standing at the kitchen island, and Emilio looked pretty uncomfortable. And you could tell that he was reluctant to even, again, he was probably still reluctant to be associated with, not because he doesn't like the guy, but it was like he's worked too hard.
Yeah.
Dragged back into this, stereotype, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. But Andrew McCarthy makes a really good point, which is, Scorsese isn't going to call someone from the Brat Pack.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's really what it did, was it labeled them and it put them and it just cheapened them.
Right.
And he's right. He's absolutely right. Like, Scorsese, what is this person in the Brat Pack? Oh, forget it. And I do understand that. And I think that that's much more of how Andrew McCarthy saw himself, maybe Emilio saw himself, but it sounds like Rob Lowe, I think, was the one, and he is who we saw a lot of during that time. I feel like he was the one that sort of embraced it and was like, I'm digging in. Here we go. I'm part of something.
He didn't like the article. He nobody liked the article. He was, had feelings about it, but he kind of didn't let it stop him. Didn't affect him as much.
Yeah. But then,
obviously.
Rob Lowe famously got in trouble for other things. Was that the 96 election?
Tape? What?
The sex tape? Was that 96? I mean, sorry, not 96. Was that the 88 election? Dukakis?
88.
So he was at the Democratic National Convention.
Bush. Okay.
So
Rob Lowe was?
Yeah, you don't remember the story? I feel like it was. So there's this infamous story that came out where Rob Lowe was at a Democratic convention, and I feel like it was presidential. So it was 1988. It had to have been. And there was some kind of tape with him and a woman, or maybe another woman.
Couple women.
Yeah. And again, at that time, now sex tapes today
no big
are
deal.
nothing. You make a sex tape today, you accidentally, and this is in air quotes, release it. Your mother accidentally releases it, and you become a billionaire.
And you make $1 million right off the bat. And then you go on to, conquer.
Star in your own show, and then, marry a famous rapper, and, and then start all this stuff. But back then, that was a huge scandal.
Wait, so did it happen at the convention, the sex tape?
I feel like it did. I I assumed that you would remember this. And around the same time, like he wasn't, his movies weren't, Rob Lowe, his movies weren't doing great. He was out drinking and partying a lot from what we saw.
Yeah.
That happens. And then he performs. Do you remember that Oscars that he performed at where he did a duet with Snow White?
No.
Oh, yes. This was probably considered one of the worst Oscars ever. It was the weirdest Oscars. I cannot remember who hosted.
He did a duet, like with an animated...
no, with a woman dressed up like Snow White.
Well, what song were they singing?
I don't remember. I can look it up. I do not remember.
Well,
I can't believe you don't remember any of these things.
No wonder he had to get sober. He was out of control. Sex tapes,
Yeah.
singing at the Oscars. I didn't know he could sing.
Yeah. I will say with all of them, I really appreciate that they've all aged pretty naturally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, Demi Moore, who we know she's had work done and such. I mean, she's such a beautiful woman. I mean, she just looks better and better. I mean, she's 60. This woman is 60.
She looks better now than she did when she was 22.
Oh God, yes. I mean, but I love seeing that. Oh my God, you guys all have wrinkles. You all Rob Lowe is still adorable, but he hasn't done a bunch of weird stuff to his face. He's still beautiful. And that's the thing. I think that's the David Blum admits this, that most of the attention when they were out that night was going to Rob Lowe. Mm-hmm. And the reality is Rob Lowe, even if he became a plumber, he was going to be the hottest plumber.
He was going to get women
no matter what,
him regardless.
Because he's beautiful looking.
He's hot.
I mean, yeah. So what are you going to do? So
and now he's hot and rich. So don't be mad.
And I have to say, I remember, again, I was back in Hollywood. I remember when West Wing came out and Rob Lowe was going to be in West Wing. And that was kind of a big deal because Rob Lowe's career was not in a good place by then. I mean, he really was struggling. And I remember seeing him in that going, I am so happy for this resurgence of Rob Lowe and just to see what he's done since then, because he's gone from West Wing to Parks and Rec to Brothers and Sisters and then Parks and Rec. I can't remember the order, but from show to show to show. And it just makes me happy.
Yeah.
Makes me happy that he kind of figured things out and got on a different track.
He found his niche.
Yes.
His place.
So the second person he sees is Ally Sheedy.
Mm-hmm.
You know what's so funny, though? I have to mention this. In the beginning, when he's calling everyone, he's just leaving messages. No one picks up for him.
No one picks up their phone. Well, I don't pick up my phone because I don't always know who's on the other end and I'm scared. I figure if it's important, if it's legit, they'll leave a message.
Yeah.
Right back,
Yeah. I mean, it was just so funny. Like, oh, hi. Oh, hi. 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 This is...
Hi. Good to hear your voice.
But he can't find Jed Nelson. Apparently, no one knows where Jed Nelson is.
No one has his phone number.
Yes.
Nobody knows.
Yes.
And he asked Molly Ringwald. She declined.
Yeah. She's kind of, I think she's always been she's kind of weird about stuff.
She's kind of aloof. Yeah.
Yeah. Ron Livingston, who I've talked about, did a TV show with Molly Ringwald called Townies. And, he would talk about her now and again, or his ex, Lisa, my friend, would talk about sort of her. And it was always their interactions with her were always a little odd because there was something she was very mindful about who was in her world. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of that was because she had been famous for so long and judged and criticized that she can be a little, that's what they always said, that I don't think it's something that's negative about her per se, but I think that it's a bit of what Emilio said, which is I was so naive. I didn't know that I couldn't trust a reporter, and it really changed things. I think it also made all of them realize I've got to keep myself over here because someone could just say something or misconstrue something. So, but Ally Sheedy is also one of those people because I think she's such a great actress and she's done a lot of different stuff, but she just really has never had that, other than that early time of her career, that show, there was a movie in the late 90s called High Art where she played a lesbian. And that was a big art house movie. And that was a bit of a comeback for her. But, you see her in things, you see her in movies, you see her in TV shows. I see her all over. But I think that's the part, she should be working a hell of a lot more than she does.
Yeah.
So I always thought she was always really good.
Yeah, how does she make a living? I mean, I can't imagine their deals on those movies were that lucrative to carry them.
Yeah.
More.
Well, and that's the other thing. They talk about this too, which is at that time, there was, we just had less media. Right. Yeah, there's only a certain number of movies that come out. There's only a certain number of TV shows that come out now. Because I saw Ally Sheedy in a TV show that probably very few people have seen. I'm forgetting the name, but it's run for 2 seasons, 10 episodes each. And it's about a young woman who's a recovering alcoholic, and it's about her time there. And Ally Sheedy plays her mother. And so there are a lot of these shows. You can watch it on Hulu. There's a lot of these shows, but they're just not as big. And that's why this was so significant, because this was everything.
Yeah, they
this
were
was our
famous. Yeah.
But Ally Sheedy talks about how there was just weirdness after the article, that she would go in for an audition and it was weird. Like everything changed. Like people just looked at her differently. That was that feeling of paying the price. So.
Yeah. And Andrew said he had a crush on her, and she's like, no, she couldn't believe that. And he's like, yeah, just like the St. Elmo's Fire characters.
Yes.
But
so, So he goes around and we meet lots of different people. He interviews John Cryer. I can't remember if there was anything significant about.
Well, he said he was not part of the Brat Pack. He did not want to be. And I don't know. He's sort of Brat Pack adjacent. There was a thing in an article in Vulture where it was kind of like a test of, okay, there was these 5 criteria to see if you really were in the Brat Pack, because this is sort of a theme in the movie. It's like, are you part of the Brat Pack? Who's part of the Brat Pack? And these people are listing off various combinations of people. And so there was like a quiz where it was like, if you met these criteria, you were in the Brat Pack. You had to be in at least one John Hughes film. You had to have been in either Breakfast Club or St. Elmo's Fire. You had to have acted with. You had to have been in a movie with Emilio Estevez. I mean, there was these criteria, and so a lot of people got 5 out of 5. Some were like 4 out of 5, but it was interesting.
And you know what I also forgot was that Emilio and Demi were dating during that same. They're engaged, during that time. It was so crazy. Yeah, they were so young.
Yeah, and he wasn't. I wouldn't consider him part of the Brat Pack, but Charlie Sheen never came up. But he was in a lot of movies in that time frame, just different kinds of movies.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I'm trying to think. Yeah. I mean, I think it is funny because I think that it's all about how you perceive things. But you're right. It is very much about, because that 3 people from Breakfast Club, which was a cast of 6, half of that cast then did St. Elmo's Fire. And I think it was the combination of those things, right? Those are the core people you remember, like the core Rob Lowe, Judd Nelson, right? The core Brat Pack people. And then there's all these people that are, on the outer edges. Yeah. I mean, Leah Thompson being one.
Yeah. Sean Penn was in a lot of movies, same kind of movies, just not in Michael J. Fox, Kevin Bacon. But there's a very strict criteria.
Yeah. Matt Damon. Yeah. Matt Damon. Sorry, Matt Dillon. Not Matt Damon. Matt Damon.
Robert Downey Jr.
Oh gosh, yes. Forgot about him. Yeah.
So I mean, this was the golden era of films about young people. People just getting, in high school, just getting out of high school, just starting their lives, and everyone who was anywhere near that stage in their life just so identified with it.
Well, and I think the other part of it too was that, I mean, especially John Hughes, right? That he was talking about things that aren't normally talked about in movies. I mean, certainly there were coming of age movies before Breakfast Club and before some of these things, but I don't think we had ever really seen it. I don't know. I don't remember seeing it to this level before. I mean, the Breakfast Club in many ways was really like, whoa.
It was intense.
It was.
They were all talking when they all sat down. They were like talked about their feelings and their fears. Every single one of them, even the jock who everyone would think, oh, like your life is perfect. Everyone idolizes you and all the girls like you, whatever. And he talked about how he felt horrible about his life. Like he had somebody's father. Every single one of them had basically the same feelings.
Yeah.
It just manifested in different ways. And yeah, John Hughes was very good at capturing all that angst and all those feelings and insecurities that everyone has, no matter what you think when you look at them, what they look like on the outside or whatever. It's the same human experience.
Yeah.
And he was just a really talented, writer, director.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I remember that. I mean, Pretty in Pink was another movie that was really, also talking about, the angst and class. And
Class was a big one. Yeah.
And, where, how you perceive people based on that and how much money they have. And he created these characters, like someone like Ducky, that still stays in our zeitgeist, in our world. So yeah, but I'm trying to think about the 70s. And so I guess there just weren't that many movies for young people, or it always seemed like young people movies either went in a couple different directions. Either it was the kind of really surface level, oh, we're having an adventure, or it was these sex comedies like, Porky's.
Like Porky's.
Yeah. Where it was just a way to like, how many boobs can we shove in here,
or like kind of horror movies where
horror, that was the other one.
Teens are being killed. Yeah. It was, this was the first genre, the first time we're really examining the true feelings of young people and giving young people credit for being, people like to criticize the youth and, don't know anything and, blah. So this was the first time that they were taken seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wonder how much of this, has impacted our generation, because I talk a lot about, generations, because I talk a lot about like Gen Z versus millennials versus this versus that. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, but I do often wonder about us, because I mean, the funniest thing is you'll see something out there, like some thing on Instagram where someone will be like, about talking about baby boomers and talking about millennials and how much, they're at odds with each other and they're fighting about this and fighting about that. And someone will say, but there's a whole generation in between the two of you and hates both of you. They don't like either one of you. And I think that that's become our moniker. And that's become how people see Gen X. Like, we are a smaller generation than boomers or millennials. We're this forgotten generation. People forget about us all the time, that we exist. And I do wonder.
Starting with our parents.
Yes. Because they didn't know it was 10 o'clock and they didn't know where
Do you know where your kids are? Yeah.
They had to tell parents back then at 10 o'clock to go check on their kids.
They had to have children.
But and we were the divorced generation and all of these. And I think that in some ways, I do wonder if, with some of this, like, it was the right time. Like, you've got an audience now that really wants this, wants to be seen, wants to be heard, and maybe looks at the world differently than other generations have. Because we do look at the world very differently than baby boomers and what our own experiences are. And I just think it's funny, because this whole thing is about, that time. And then this article, it's like, yeah, we have to fight this now too. Like, God damn it. Like, you don't understand us. Like, you keep pigeonholing us,
Yeah, kind of I know. Well, and another character who we see who is maybe Brat Pack adjacent is James Spader, who,
oh God,
there's never been a better villain than James Spader.
Yeah.
God, I mean, he's just adorable. But he really is. He's so good looking. That Less Than Zero. God, remember that?
Yeah. The character he played in Pretty in Pink is pretty much just like his Less Than Zero character. They're kind of the same.
They're the same person.
Yeah, essentially, like, this person grew up and became this other person. But
and so, also, another thing, going back to like why these movies were so important. Like, they talked about this whole concept. Okay, so this is, again, prior to any kind of technology whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
You had to go to the mall or to the movie theater or whatever to go see it. And they talked about investing in something.
Yes.
To see a movie, to invest your time, to get there early. And, we were really invested in seeing these movies. And it made me think too of, right now with all the stuff with concert tickets and Ticketmaster and whatever, again, before we had computers, if you wanted to get a concert ticket, I guess maybe you could call Ticketmaster. But what we did, we used to camp outside the record store. I remember when my freshman year of college, U2 was coming to the LA Coliseum. A bunch of my sorority sisters and I wanted to go. There was a record store in Isla Vista, the little town where all the university kids lived. We slept outside on like chase lounges in sleeping bags in front of this record store so that when we opened the next morning at 7 a.m. or whatever, when the tickets went on sale, we could all get that was the only way we could all get tickets to sit together.
Yeah.
And we wanted to all go together. And that was the only way to do it. Because even if you called in, you're not going to get seats next to each other. You really buy so many.
Psych Legal Pop will be back after these messages. Hello, this is Tess Brigham, one half of the podcast Psych Legal Pop. When I'm not podcasting with my sister and analyzing pop culture, I'm a speaker who talks about mental health in the workplace. In today's post-pandemic hybrid working world, mental health matters more than ever. I specialize in empowering organizations to retain their valuable employees. I understand the unique challenges facing young adults in today's world, and I'm here to bridge the gap. So head over to my website, www.tessbrigham.com, to learn more about my speaking services and how I can help your organization reach new heights of success. Let's revolutionize your organization's approach to mental health and employee retention. Visit www.tessbrigham.com to explore how we can collaborate.
Chicago, 2011. A cop is murdered. Police and prosecutors swear they have the trigger man. He swears he didn't do it. How far will each side go to prove they're right?
Like it's just one bombshell after another, where you're like, what?
The story of a PlayStation, a brain-eating amoeba, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Off Duty, out now. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellows wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, this was also the time of malls, right? They talk about this a little bit too, which is the mall was invented. So there was this place that people could go, again, where are your kids? They're at the mall, right?
At the mall for
and it's
20 hours.
Yeah, it's true. A lot of people there are no malls in Berkeley. So I don't ever remember going to the mall that much, but but Steve did. That was very much his world. And so, yeah, all across the country in suburbia, all these kids, would Saturday morning, go to the mall. And part of your mall day was going to a movie. And after, what Star Wars did for films is Star Wars was really this movie that people would go see over and over again. People really didn't see movies many, many times until Star Wars came about. And so we're post Star Wars and all of that now. And so it was very popular to see certain movies. And then also the invention of VHS, of tape. So now you can touch movies. Now you can go, and I remember that now,
rent a movie.
And renting movies. And I remember as a kid, like a teenager, we would all watch the same movies, like Pretty in Pink, Breakfast Club. You'd watch, there were all those movies. There were certain movies you just watched, Some Kind of Wonderful, over and over. And it was really the 16 Candles. It was all the John Hughes movies. And so there was this repetition. So you felt more connected to the people and you saw yourself in them. And again, because it was just allowed us to kind of be seen. I think when we really didn't feel like maybe we were being seen by our parents, because that's not what parenting was then.
No, parenting then was you provided for your kids and
Yeah,
that was about it.
Yeah, you provided for them. You kept them alive.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You know, you go to work to make money,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to pay for their life, buy clothes, you know, help you buy a car, help you do this, help you do that. But
well, and make sure you have good grades so you can go to college and get you off to college and you know, get you set so that you could be, you know, by the time you leave college, an upstanding adult. And but there wasn't a lot of, I'm thinking about your emotional needs.
Mm-hmm.
Though I don't know. I feel like mom was always really good with that kind of stuff. I mean, dad, but I felt like I was seen in some ways, but it still isn't the same, I think, as it is today, as how hard parents work today to understand their kid and make them feel accepted and seen. I don't know. Yeah, no, it is very different. And I'm not, so when I say that kind of stuff, I'm not like personally attacking my parents or anybody else. It's just that they were raised by that silent generation, which was even worse. Mm-hmm. So, you know, every generation tries to do a little bit better. Yeah. They were better than their parents and we're better than our parents. And our kids will probably be better than us. You know, that's hopefully, like, hopefully that's incremental, you know, evolution. But yeah, it was weird being a kid in the 80s. That's all I can say. Yeah. Yeah. Well, so he, Andrew McCarthy, he interviews this talent manager named Lori Rodkin. I had no idea who she is. Marcy Learoff is a casting director. She's done a ton of stuff. Mm-hmm. But I was really surprised that he got Malcolm Gladwell. Yeah. And I was like, I wanted more of that interview. There was so little of it. Yeah. But basically he wanted to talk to someone about the social science aspect of it. And pretty much Malcolm Gladwell said, you know, what we're talking about, which there was this generational transition in Hollywood. And that what made, you know, when you think about the Brat Pack versus the Rat Pack, right? The Brat Pack, the idea was that they were these young, anxious, kind of angsty people. But the Rat Pack and what that represented, Rat Pack was supposed to represent like being carefree and not caring and like, hey, we're these, you know, insiders. Hey, let's just smoke and drink and have a good time, you know, what's there to worry about? And that in some ways having that, there's no way to have that today. That's what Malcolm Gladwell was saying, because there's no common denominator, right? There's nothing that really represents people in that way. And because media is so split. Right. Because young people used to have more of a singular experience. Yes. Singular life experience. Because all you knew was what was around you or what was on television. Mm-hmm. So unless you went out, we didn't have the internet. So unless you traveled somewhere, that's why going to college was such a valuable experience. It still is. But even back then, it was such a valuable experience because it got you maybe out of your hometown, you know, got you somewhere out in the world, and maybe you could travel, have some experiences. Otherwise, all you know are what you see in these movies and what you see in front of you. But now with the internet, you can go on the internet and you can see what everybody anywhere in the world is doing. So there's no like, it's just all like scattered. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm not explaining it as well as he did, but yeah, no, but yeah. And the other thing that they brought up, which I didn't even think about, was just the music associated with it, because I guess John Hughes was a big fan of this new wave music. And I just kind of felt like that was the music of the times, but I didn't realize that he really introduced people to a certain it became the music of the times because he introduced it in the movies, and then it would get popular in the but just so interesting that how this one man really did influence like an entire time, like because he liked these things, you know, this becomes part of the, you know, part of our lives, because the soundtracks to these movies also were big. I mean, I remember like the St. Elmo's Fire soundtrack, and you know, all of these soundtracks, these were some kind of yeah, all of these soundtracks were huge. Oh my God. The Footloose soundtrack was like, I mean, everyone had that album. Everybody. Oh yeah. Everybody. But the one thing they did mention was that John Hughes never really focused on race. Yeah. All of his movies, everyone was white. except for, unfortunately, Long Duck Dong. I mean, like, that was the one time you see, and it was really, really bad. So that is like, we should say that he captured it for white people.
Yeah, and that's what Malcolm Gladwell was saying, is that he was just portraying like the typical suburban experience. And the reality was that at that time, the typical suburban experience is everyone's white, you know? Yeah. He said there might be one or two black kids in your school, because it was all on economic lines. It's like where you could afford to live. And so, yeah.
Okay. Who else does he talk to? I thought this was kind of interesting that he went to go speak to Timothy Hutton, because I would have never thought Timothy Hutton was a part of any of this, because I never saw him that way.
Didn't they call him something like the
Godfather? The
Godfather of these, you know, young actors, because he was a few years older, and he had already won an Oscar
for Ordinary People.
When he was like 24 or maybe younger, and so he was he wasn't in the Brat Pack, but he was kind of like the person who started that generation of talented young actors.
Yeah, and you think, I mean, Ordinary People wasn't just about kids, but it was a movie that really focused on what his, being the brother, his experience of losing this sibling. And you know what's interesting? I was thinking about after school specials. Back in the 80s, there were always these after school specials and or special episodes of a TV show like Growing Pains or Facts of Life or like Family Ties, where, we're going to tackle racism. We're going to tackle a big subject here. And I think that I think we were a bit primed in a way. I think that there was this talk of young people. I think that what made these John Hughes movies so special was he was speaking to us and not talking to us like we were idiots. Like, Johnny is doing drugs. Johnny is bad. Like really sort of showing us, people. Yeah. People grappling.
Cautionary tales. Yeah.
Yeah. There were no cautionary, he wasn't there like freaking us out. I think that's the other, right? What you're talking about. We were so, don't do drugs. Don't do this.
Right.
Don't get kidnapped.
Don't get pregnant. Try not to get kidnapped. We might die by nuclear war, but if that happens, just get under your desk.
And you'll be fine.
If a nuclear bomb is dropped, just get under your desk, wait it out, and, hope for the best. It was a very fearful time. That's another thing, too. The 80s, this is like the Cold War era. We were basically told we were going to probably die in a nuclear war. There was going to be a nuclear war with Russia. AIDS came along, and we were told that if we had sex, we would probably die. I mean, it was, and there were still kids getting kidnapped, and, there were still, it was a very fearful, I think young people were very anxious. And
but I think he captured it in this very smart way. Yeah. Like he really said,
let's deal with it. Let's look at this. Why? Yeah. Why is it that even these beautiful people, at the high school, they feel just as bad about themselves as you do?
Yes.
Like everybody has the same human experience. It doesn't really matter.
But I think it's in the conversation with Timothy Hutton that Andrew McCarthy starts talking about this idea of, and I think I mentioned this earlier, of, how with kids and as an actor, right, it's so much of this is about see me, hear me, and that how the article impacted, especially Andrew, right? It suddenly was like, don't see me, don't hear me, like pushing away. Yeah. And that protectiveness, right? He talks about becoming very protective, which is not at all helpful as an actor. And that's when it was in this conversation with Demi Moore that it like hit me, which is like, oh, wow. It was his limiting beliefs. Like Andrew McCarthy, each of them took the article in a different way. And he took it in as, this is who I am, or this is how the world sees me. And I now need to hide, versus Demi Moore, who, really got in there and was like, well, why did we take it as an offense? Is it offensive? Like, it sounds to me like she decided, you know, and she doesn't really talk. I can't remember if she talked about that in her autobiography or not, but it sounds like for her, she just decided, well, F it, I'm going to ignore it.
Yeah.
Or forget. I mean, Demi Moore already had a rough life up until this point. So I think she had endured some other really horrible things up until this point. So I think for her, it was like, one more thing.
Well, yeah. And also women, we're used to having to ignore people saying negative things. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe Andrew had never, he's I don't know, a white guy. He probably came from some privilege. And all of a sudden someone's calling him out, and I think he just couldn't take it. Like, I don't think he'd ever really been criticized or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, Demi Moore, she says this, which is a phrase that, I use often, which is you can see it as either happening to you or for you. You know, does it happen to you? And I think for Andrew, it happened to him and it became this emblem of these things. But I think for her, it was like, okay, well, I'm just going to fuel, it's happening for me. It's fueling me in some way. She felt like she had to rise above it. So I thought what she had to say was really interesting.
Yeah. I mean,
really her perspective of it.
Yeah. She should get a job as a life coach. I mean, it's like, God, this woman has had a lot of therapy.
Yeah. Well, she's been through a lot. The other thing too, is I think with Demi Moore, and again, I think it's so interesting. I think it's right, seeing how each of them reacted to it and whether you could take it in and see it as a positive. I think for Demi Moore too, I think was very lucky that she met Bruce Willis when she did. I mean, I think that her marrying Bruce Willis allowed her to take herself out of that in some ways. Like, I think some of it is there were people that were able to just separate themselves very quickly from that. And suddenly once she married Bruce Willis, it was less about the Brat Pack.
Everyone
that helped her.
Everyone forgot about the Brat Pack. Yeah, once she was with him, and then she started making these movies, and she's the highest paid one.
And they're a power couple. They were kind of a big first power couple. Yeah, we really, not the first, but they were a big deal. Yeah, in the 90s.
Forgotten she was even part of all that.
Yeah, yeah. So, we also meet Howard Deutsch, who was the director of Pretty in Pink. And I guess he mentioned something about Leah. I think
he's married to Leah.
He is currently? Still married. Okay.
Thompson.
I'm talking about reshooting Pretty in Pink. And I thought he said something very interesting. He said they were talking about success and what it is. And he said, success is a hard one because you're so fortunate to get it. But at the same time, you have to struggle to escape being pigeonholed. When you become successful for something, it is, it's all your dreams come true. It's everything that maybe you've always wanted. And at the same time, it creates this humongous hurdle that you're constantly having to kind of butt up against your entire career. So, and then we meet Rob Lowe. We see Rob Lowe, who really embraced all of these things. And he talks about this. He talks about, they talked about how, the Brat Pack really helped create, because in the 90s were all about CW and WB and all of these. There was a resurgence in the 90s of I Know What You Did Last Summer and Scream, of another young group of Hollywood that took over, and that sort of led into Friends and this idea of friendship and friends. And then we talked about the David Blum, the two of them talking about their whole thing, and let's see.
Who else? Is there anyone? Who else did he meet with?
Of significance? We never ever, Judd Nelson, I guess they talk at the end, but we never see that talk. I guess he didn't want to be filmed, or he was willing to call him back. I think I was also really surprised by how, again, like Rob Lowe and Andrew McCarthy hadn't seen each other in decades.
None of them had seen each other since,
which is so
the last
odd, like
movie they were in.
I was like, you guys don't ever even run into each other or anything. Like, really, truly, it's so interesting that like they hadn't seen each other and that there was some animosity between the two of them. Like they didn't really get along. I mean,
who didn't get along?
I think that didn't he say that they were very competitive. Rob Lowe and Andrew McCarthy were very competitive.
Well, they made that Class movie together. Was that before?
That was before.
Almost?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, and Andrew McCarthy doesn't live in LA. He lives
in New York. It seems like.
Yeah, because he flew there.
But
so yeah, maybe he just went back to the East Coast, and so you're not going to run into them.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that he sort of wraps up the movie, Andrew does, talking about sort of like how the article really, he lost the narrative of his career. And that I think that's what he was trying to get David Blum to kind of hear and understand of like how much, this really impacted them. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember who said this, but someone said, you have to surrender to it. Maybe Demi Moore. She's so wise. Mm-hmm. She said, we can't control how people remember us or how we're perceived. That we can't, that in many ways that, right, we have these limiting beliefs about ourselves. We either get them from our parents or from our experiences. And they're these core beliefs that we have about life, and they get so ingrained in us. And it's really hard to let them go. I mean, I think for me personally, I have this limiting belief of if you want to make money and be successful, you have to work incredibly hard, like really hard, like all the time. And I think we got that from our parents, because they're very hard workers. And so it's really, I've spent the last umpteen years of my life, like trying not to kill myself, trying not to do so much, give much, is too much, right? That because even like this podcast is a great example of, in my mind, the solution to being more successful is to give more, to do more, like let's record more, give more, do more. And it's like, no, that's not the solution. That's not the solution. But that's always where I go, and where, how our limiting beliefs can get so ingrained in who we are and the choices we make and how we see ourselves.
It's everything. And it's subconscious. We don't know we're doing it until, one day we decide I can't live like this anymore. And then you start to dig in and be like, okay, why am I doing this? Where did this come from? How do I turn this around? It takes a lot of work. And Demi Moore's done a lot of work.
Oh, yeah. Because she's
done a lot of work on herself. Because she's very clear about everything.
Yeah. And she's had to. She really has. Because she had a hard childhood, and then got into two really hard marriages. And,
and she had substance abuse problems. She was sober for all those years, and then she got with Ashton Kutcher, and then she started drinking again. And so she's had to get over that twice, she's been through a lot.
Well, and also don't forget, she was the biggest star of the 90s.
Yeah.
And she was a woman who was getting $15 million, $20 million the first time ever. And people were mad at her. Everybody was angry at her.
They were still
while her husband was getting $20 million a movie, she would get 12, and then no one would say boo to Bruce Willis or Arnold Schwarzenegger or any of these other men, but she was criticized. And that's kind of why she left Hollywood that first time, after her marriage ended and all that stuff happened. Her mom passed away, that's when she left, because she just couldn't take it anymore. But she says this, she says, she says to Andrew, you made the article to mean something. And it does in varying degrees, but the article wasn't about any of us. Mm-hmm. It was about the person who wrote it.
Yeah.
And it was about David Blum, who still cannot admit at all that maybe
judged people, maybe.
Yeah, maybe he made some snap judgments, and that maybe he didn't. Because I think that he can't, because if he does, then people don't want to admit these things. They don't want to admit to themselves they've done something wrong. Or you did something, that really affected a lot of people. Or
he seems very self-important. I don't know. I really dislike him. And I really do. And I'm really upset that he can't even, all these years later, just say, can't even apologize, you know, this and say, gosh, I'm sorry. At least say you're sorry. At least acknowledge that
Yeah. Well,
Anyway.
and he said that he thought he would get a bunch of a success for it, right? He said, I thought I would be ushered into Dina Brown's office, who was the editor of Vanity Fair at that time.
Mhm.
I think he thought this was going to be a big deal.
And what else has he done in his career?
I don't know. I mean, he obviously still writes for New York Magazine because these articles just came out where he talks about this again. And I think it was New York Magazine that it was.
Well, they could have asked him for
I guess that's true.
Follow up. I have to look into what he's doing now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't like it. Okay, this was something really weird. Did you notice in many, many scenes in this movie, you see the camera people?
Yeah. Is that bad?
Well, usually you don't see the camera people. It's almost like they made no efforts to try to hide the camera people, because there's 3 people at different angles.
Mm-hmm.
And usually they get out of the way for the different shots and they edit it so you never see the camera people. But it was like they just were like, oh, okay, well, if they're in there, I don't know, the editing. It was like it was completely edited.
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe it might have been one of those things where they're like, we'd rather have the content, like whatever they're saying is more important than maybe what they're showing. I also think he interviewed a few writers and other people, a woman who wrote a book all about the 80s and the Brat Pack and how it impacted her. And there was another writer in there. And I feel like she had a very tiny New York apartment. And I just think there just wasn't a lot of space in some of these places. I don't know. I mean, I know what you're talking about. I remember seeing that going, okay, we're seeing the camera people. But at the same time, I mean, we're seeing, I don't know, with documentaries, I don't mind it so much because we're kind of seeing a little bit of like, oh, this is stuff normally they would chop out, but they're not, because we kind of see what the behind the scenes is, or we get to see Emilio Estevez walking right up to the car and saying hi. It was funny how many of the people went right up to him to greet him, like, hi, oh, you're in the car. And then the director was like, that shot's not going to work now. He was looking at stuff.
Yeah.
So, but I understand what you're saying.
It was a little casual. But
it did have a happy ending because at the end, it seemed like, right, that now that there's been a lot of time passed, that they're like, we were part of something big. We're part of something significant, that we will be part of something that will always be in books and talked about. And they can look back on it fondly in a lot of ways. But it sounds like what it really did was that they were all living in this really happy place, in this, just doing what they're doing. And it seemed to kind of come in and blow everything up and change everything for people, for better or for worse.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, most of them went on to do just fine. But if that article hadn't come out, maybe they would have continued to make movies together and maybe, missed out on some things. And and I think it was Rob Lowe who he's just, seems like a very positive person.
Yeah.
He was like, he was like, yeah, focus on the good things about this. This was great. Like, we got to make some great movies. We did some great things. And oh my God, the Sammy Davis Jr.
Oh, that story. Oh my gosh.
So they were at Spago, I think it was.
Which was remember, I think, did we go to Spago with Dad? Did Dad take us to Spago? I feel like
we did. Because
that was a big deal in the 80s. Spago Wolfgang Puck was the place. And I feel like I remember Dad, when we were in LA, took us to Spago. I don't know.
I have a vague recollection of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of celebrities hung out there. And so Rob and Andrew, and was there another person or was it just them?
I think it was just them.
They go to Spago one night and they sit down, and sitting next to them is Liza Minnelli, and so they start talking to her, and she's very friendly and very nice. And then she asks them, she's like, hey, I'm going over to Sammy's house, meaning Sammy Davis Jr. Do you want to come?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, yeah. And so they go with her over to his house, and he's like, yeah, I love you guys. You guys are so cool. I love what you're doing. He's pouring them drinks, and they're
yeah.
And
Sammy's a good time. Even sober. Apparently he had gotten sober by then. Andrew McCarthy had said, yeah, he was sober, but it's fun.
Still not a full bar.
Yeah. But a fun guy.
You got to entertain. You know, if someone comes by, you got to be ready. But yeah, I mean, and I think, yeah, that was the kind of life they were living. And yeah, good for them.
Yeah.
I wish I was doing that kind of stuff at 22 or 23.
Well, and also that's the whole thing about show business. And they allude to this too, which is there's good and there's bad with it, right? There's these, you get to have these great experiences and meet these people that you've always seen. But the flip side of it is, people are going to unfairly criticize you. And maybe that's why, I mean, the more we talk about it, the more I'm like, yeah, maybe that's why it hit Andrew McCarthy so much, because of the fact that maybe, he talks about his dad a little bit. Seems like they had a difficult relationship, but I do wonder if, maybe he just had never been criticized like that ever, versus the way in which I'm sure Emilio got like advice from his dad and, got help there. And Demi had already been through such hell. I think that's why they were able to see it differently. And Rob Lowe is beautiful as always. So I think he was kind of like, I'm having a good time, He
just has a more positive disposition.
Yeah.
Andrew McCarthy's kind of, his personality is, he's intense and he's, probably a glass half empty kind of person.
Yeah.
And it was just a combination of things that he just took it really hard.
Yeah.
I don't know why he's been lamenting about it for 30 years, but I hope that.
Oh my God. I mean, he's 59. I was like, wow. I mean, I just can't believe how old. I mean, how old everyone has gotten and how much time it's really stuck with him. But I do. And I think that his best work has been done. I mean, I think it's, as a director, as an actor, really has been in the last umpteen years, because maybe he's finally let it all go. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, anywho, I wish we had seen Judd Nelson or, Molly Ringwald. I would have loved to hear from, I wish we had gotten a few more Brat Packers. I thought we would get Judd Nelson at some point.
Yeah.
That was kind of a bummer, because I think Judd Nelson is the one that really, I don't know what happened with him in his career. He just...
Oh, he's making some weird movies. I was watching this movie. I started watching it on, I don't know if sometimes people will put movies on TikTok, like one clip at a time. Literally, they'll just, there's like 100 clips.
Oh my gosh.
And so, somehow I started watching it and I kept clicking on the next one. And it was this movie called The Girl in the Basement. And he plays a father who basically fakes the disappearance of his daughter, but she's really being held captive by him in the basement. And he's sexually abusing her, and she gets pregnant with his baby. And she's hiding in the basement with his baby.
Oh my gosh.
And that
is really disturbing.
It is. And the family, his wife and other kids are living upstairs.
Oh, wait, there's all these other people in the house? Oh, yes. How insane is that? Now I want to see this movie.
And he goes back and forth. He brings her food or whatever and is like abusing her. And it was very disturbing. That I don't know what I was thinking, why I kept
Did you watch the whole thing?
Not the whole thing, but enough to get the gist of all of that. I did not watch the entire thing, but I was just like, what the fuck is this? And why is Judd Nelson in this movie?
Well, yeah, I mean, he was, he was primed. And then I remember he did that TV movie, Billionaire Boys Club. Remember that story of that guy? They did a documentary about him, about that whole scam and the murders and so on and so forth. And then, and then I know in the 90s, he was on that Suddenly Susan with Brooke Shields, and that lasted a bit. But like, I cannot name, I mean, I know he's been in a bunch of movies, but, and I think some of them are well known. I mean, some of them were, but he was never the star. He was always like a part, a 2 or 3 day part of someone who kind of came in and left. You'd be like, oh, it's Judd Nelson.
Yeah.
But since then, we really don't know what's going on with him. And the fact that Judd Nelson's manager can't even seem to get in touch with him. I mean, that's the scary part. Like, his manager should know how to find him.
Yeah.
He should be talking to him every day, at some point. So that's weird. That's very, very weird. Yeah. So anywho. But yes.
Well, Well, I loved it.
Yes,
I loved it.
yes. It's great to go back down memory lane and talk about and think about all these things
Yes,
again.
and I just love our little Gen X generation. I think it's the best.
Yeah, it's funny too, because when I go and I do these, this talk about the generations and each one, I always will get, especially when you do them on Zoom, there's people that have that chat feature. I'll always get at least a couple Gen Xers that are like, I'm Gen X, we're still here, fuck all of you, we have no time for any of you people, like, we're badasses. Like, there's always, it's never a boomer. A boomer never proclaims themselves. The millennials don't, Gen Z doesn't, but there's always a Gen Xer who kind of has to come in and be like, fuck everybody else. We're the best. We're taking care of business. And I think that that's kind of been our thing, right? Is that we're a teeny tiny little generation and we're still here and we're still putting our heads down and we're going. That's why no one's talking about us, because we're not getting in anybody's faces. So, and I don't know, maybe the Brat Pack part was part of that. We were getting too full of ourselves. And so someone had to knock us back a little. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think that because I think we're just tough. We had to raise ourselves, kind of. Yeah, I don't know. We're scrappy.
Yeah, we are scrappy.
That's a good scrappy generation.
That's a good way of saying it. All right, let's wrap it up.
Okay. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your support. If you would like to support the podcast, we have a Patreon, which we just added another tier.
Yes. To
the Patreon. So you have a choice. You can join at the $5 level, which gives you a bonus episode once a week. It also gives you all of the free episodes ad free. And the bonus episodes, we talk about all kinds of stuff, all kinds of pop culture stuff, what's going on. If anything happens exciting in our lives, we might talk about that. And then we have our $8 tier, which is the ad-free episodes, the bonus episodes, plus once a month, you get a true crime episode, special one that's just for Patreon members. And the one that's coming out soon is Murder in Boston. And you get access to all the past episodes too. So we have one on there for, we did Lover, Stalker, Killer. What else did we do?
Oh, now I can't remember the other ones that we did.
Anyway, they're good. And then once a month, we also do a Ask Us Anything episode. You can ask legal questions. You can ask therapy questions, general life questions, anything. If you want to ask us a question, people seem to like to, ask personal questions about our lives, which is fine. We're pretty open with that.
So the tier where you just get the bonus and the ad free is called the Little Sister tier. And that's $5. And the $8 tier is now called the Big Sister tier. If we add one above that, I don't know what we're going to call that. And that is the one where you get everything that you get for the $5 plus the monthly Ask Us Anything and monthly True Crime. So come check us out at patreon.com/psychlegalpop.
Yeah, it's a lot of good content. So you can also just, another way to support the podcast is if you just hit the subscribe button. So you automatically get our episodes whenever they come out. And we are on Instagram at psychlegalpop. And we have email, psychlegalpoppodcast@gmail.com if you want to email us with any suggestions. I don't know.
And don't forget, if another way to support us is to give us a 5-star rating review. Just the rating is great. But if you enjoy the podcast, if you enjoy us, if you could take a moment and go to Apple, those reviews really do help us and help grow the podcast and get it out in front of new people and so on.
Yeah, we would appreciate that. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you or talk to you next time.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
Pepsi Prebiotic Cola in original and cherry vanilla. That Pepsi taste you love, with no artificial sweeteners, only 30 calories, just 5 grams of sugar, and 3 grams of prebiotic fiber. That great Pepsi taste with even more to love. Pepsi Prebiotic Cola. Unbelievably Pepsi.